Before we dive in, if you love epic tales of war, strategy, hit that subscribe and like button, turn on notifications, and join our growing legion of warriors. Now, let's begin. Imagine this. A universe where humanity was never meant to rise, where Earth was nothing more than an unnoticed rock spinning in the void, until one day, something happened that changed everything. A signal, an intercepted transmission, a warning from the depths of the cosmos. It began with a routine scan. Deep space listening stations, once used for detecting asteroids and cosmic anomalies, had long been repurposed for the Great Search. The search for life beyond Earth. For decades, there had been nothing but silence, until a faint pulse, a rhythmic pattern that no known natural phenomenon could explain. It came from a sector of space where nothing should be. No pulsars, no black holes, just the abyss. But this signal was deliberate, intelligent. Something, was transmitting. The first response from Earth was one of excitement. Scientists scrambled to decode the message, expecting the first contact moment that humanity had dreamed of for centuries. But the more they analyzed the signal, the more their excitement turned to fear. It wasn't a greeting, it was a warning. The message, when translated, was chilling. To the inhabitants of Sol 3, you are not alone. You were never alone. But you must remain hidden. Do not answer. Do not signal. Do not let them know you are there. Whoever sent it had taken great risks. The message had been encoded, buried beneath the radiation of cosmic background noise, as if meant to avoid detection by someone or something else. Governments scrambled to react. The world's most powerful leaders were pulled into secret emergency meetings. What did this mean? Was it a hoax? A trap? Or was Earth already in danger? Then, before humanity could even decide what to do, the second signal arrived. Unlike the first, this one wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Across the sky, radio telescopes picked up an incoming transmission, a pulse of energy so powerful it disrupted satellites and communication grids worldwide. And this time, the message was unmistakable. To the primitives of Sol 3, your existence is known. You have been measured. You have been judged. And now, you will be erased. The galaxy had just acknowledged Earth's existence, but not as an equal, not as a species worthy of diplomacy. To them, humanity was an infestation, a primitive, unapproved life form that had spread too far. And the exterminators were already on their way. Panic erupted across the planet. The media was silenced. The internet scrubbed of all traces of the event. But in underground bunkers and war rooms, the question that would define Earth's survival was being asked. How do you fight an enemy that sees you as nothing more than vermin? The answer would shake the galaxy to its core. The world changed overnight. The second message sent shockwaves through every government, every military, and every hidden agency sworn to protect Earth from threats unknown. A species that considered humanity nothing more than vermin was coming. And if the transmission was to be believed, they had done this before. But who were they? And how much time did Earth have before they arrived? The brightest minds on the planet were mobilized to find out. Scientists, cryptographers, astrophysicists, military strategists, working under complete secrecy. The public could never know the truth. Not yet. The risk of global panic was too great. But it didn't take long for one horrifying fact to emerge. The signal hadn't been a simple warning. It had been a ping, a hunter's call. Whoever sent it had locked onto Earth's position, broadcasting it to the rest of the galaxy like a dinner bell ringing in the void. And the hunters? They were already moving. The first signs of war had started small. Deep space probes positioned at the farthest edges of the solar system began vanishing. At first, it was blamed on equipment failure, space debris, solar interference. But then the orbital defense grid, humanity's secret line of observation, beyond Neptune, picked up something else. Movement. Not asteroids. Not debris. Ships. They were vast, unlike anything Earth had ever imagined. Perfect spheres of black metal, absorbing all radar pings, bending light around them as if they refused to be seen. But their presence was undeniable, and they were getting closer. The countdown had begun. Earth had weeks, maybe days. And the terrifying truth? Humanity had never even considered this scenario. All previous war games, all military doctrine, had been designed for human conflicts, territorial disputes, political betrayals, nuclear deterrence. But this was an extermination, humanity's response. There was no time to build a fleet, no time to design superweapons. Earth was years, maybe centuries, behind whatever was coming. Conventional weapons? Useless against something that had likely conquered dozens, maybe hundreds of civilizations before even knowing humanity existed. And yet, there was one thing that gave humanity an edge: desperation. Throughout history, when faced with extinction, humanity had always done the unthinkable, the impossible. When civilizations fell, humanity adapted. When enemies invaded, humanity evolved. And now, with the weight of an entire planet on the line, the most desperate minds on Earth began forming the only plan that could work. Earth would not hide. Earth would not beg. Earth would stand. The first move was brutal. A scorched Earth defense before the enemy even arrived. Deep space mines, originally designed for asteroid fragmentation, were repurposed into nuclear-laced traps. Every military satellite was converted into a weapon. Old Cold War contingency plans, long discarded, were activated with terrifying efficiency. And then came the most insane idea of all. If Earth couldn't fight in space, then space itself would be turned into a trap. Massive solar flares were artificially induced, sending waves of radiation into carefully calculated vectors. Electromagnetic pulses were launched beyond the orbit of Mars, creating pockets of disruption where nothing electronic could survive. And most daring of all, humanity did the one thing no other species in the galaxy had ever done before. They signaled back. Not with words, not with peace offerings, but with a message that sent a shiver through the darkness. We know you're coming. And we are waiting. It was madness, sheer defiance. And yet, for the first time, the galaxy hesitated. Because the hunters had never faced prey that refused to run. The galaxy had seen countless worlds fall, planets reduced to smoldering husks, civilizations wiped out before they even understood the scale of the enemy they faced. The hunters, whoever they were, had mastered the art of planetary extermination. They did not negotiate, they did not warn twice, and they did not expect resistance. But Earth was not like the others. The moment humanity broadcast its response, "We know you're coming, and we are waiting," the galaxy took notice. Across the cosmos, hidden civilizations listened in. Some pitied humanity. Some admired its defiance. But none believed it had a chance. The extermination fleet arrived on the outer edge of the solar system. Nearly invisible against the blackness of space, their ships defied every known law of warfare. They moved without engines, glided without inertia, adapted without hesitation. They were ghosts, unstoppable, relentless. But humanity had done something the hunters had never encountered before. Earth had turned space itself into a weapon. The ambush at the edge of the system. The first fleet of enemy warships reached the Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy debris orbiting the sun far beyond Neptune. Their approach was silent. No energy signals, no radio waves. They expected to enter the system undetected, to strike before humanity even knew they were there. But they were wrong. In the last desperate weeks before their arrival, human engineers had devised a brutal last-resort strategy. They had repurposed old asteroid mining drones, thousands of them, each carrying payloads of raw nuclear material, each designed to activate only when triggered by motion not of human origin. The enemy's arrival set off a chain reaction. Explosions. Massive, relentless, indiscriminate. A field of nuclear fire erupted across the Kuiper Belt, vaporizing dozens of enemy ships in an instant. The vacuum of space swallowed the shockwaves, but the sheer destructive force sent debris hurtling at relativistic speeds, ripping through enemy formations like bullets through flesh. The hunters recoiled. For the first time in recorded history, their prey had struck first, and then Earth did the unthinkable. It broadcasted the attack across open channels, live footage, enemy ships burning, collapsing under their own gravity, shattering into frozen dust. The galaxy watched in silence. They had seen civilizations beg. They had seen planets fall, but never had they seen a species hunt back. The battle for Mars, the enemy adapted quickly. They had underestimated the humans once. They would not make the same mistake again. The second wave bypassed the asteroid field entirely, accelerating toward Mars, Earth's last stronghold before the final battle. The plan was simple: annihilate humanity's outer colonies, cripple their infrastructure, then descend upon Earth itself like gods delivering final judgment. But the humans were waiting. Mars had no grand fleet, no planetary shields, no superweapons. What it did have was ingenuity. In the months leading up to the invasion, every civilian spacecraft, every outdated military drone, every ounce of raw material had been converted into a singular purpose: the largest kinetic bombardment in human history. As the enemy fleet approached, Mars did not fire lasers. It did not launch missiles. Instead, it unleashed millions of tons of rock and metal at velocities near the speed of light. The first impacts were catastrophic. Enemy ships, designed to withstand energy weapons but not raw physics, shattered under the onslaught. Entire sections of the fleet disintegrated as high-speed debris punched through them like paper. But the hunters kept coming. Ships the size of cities descended upon Mars, deploying weapons beyond human understanding, spatial distortions that shredded reality itself, pulses of energy that turned metal to dust. Humanity had fought well, but now, the full might of the extermination force was upon them, and Earth's final stand was about to begin. Mars had bought Earth time, but at a terrible cost. The colony was in ruins. The surface lay scorched, the red sands now blackened with the debris of both human and alien war machines. The defenders had fought with everything they had, using ingenuity, desperation, and sheer willpower to strike where no other species had dared. But the enemy was relentless. The surviving warships of the extermination fleet regrouped beyond Mars's orbit, adapting once more. Humanity had wounded them, and in response, they would ensure no human voice would ever echo through the stars again. Now, Earth was all that remained, and it would not fall quietly. The final defensive line. Every military strategist on Earth had known that Mars was only the beginning. The true battle would be fought above the skies of humanity's homeworld, and so, the last of humanity's war effort had been poured into Earth's defense. There were no interstellar battleships, no fleets of cosmic war cruisers, no planet-cracking superweapons. Instead, there was the grid. Earth's orbital defenses had once been simple: satellites, old military installations, long-abandoned projects from wars never fought. But now, those remnants of forgotten conflicts had been reborn. Every abandoned space station became a fortress. Every weather satellite became an early warning system. Civilian stations were repurposed as kinetic bombardment platforms. And most terrifying of all, humanity had weaponized the moon itself. Lunar bases had been transformed into the deadliest artillery platforms in history. Railgun batteries designed for asteroid mining now pointed outward, set to fire hyper-accelerated projectiles at any incoming enemy. The very crust of the moon had been hollowed out to hide nuclear payloads, waiting for the moment of activation. And Earth itself? The planet had been turned into a death trap. Every military installation, every missile silo, every secret underground bunker, every last piece of technology humanity had ever created had been reprogrammed for one singular goal: absolute resistance. The enemy fleet arrived. Thousands of vessels, each the size of a city. Their black hulls devoured light, blotting out stars, as they descended toward Earth. They did not speak. They did not offer terms of surrender. They only prepared to erase. The bombardment began. Hellfire from the heavens. For the first time in recorded history, Earth's skies burned with weapons not of its own making. The first enemy strike tore through the upper atmosphere, erasing entire sections of orbiting defenses in an instant. The grid retaliated, millions of high-speed projectiles slicing through space, shattering smaller enemy ships like glass. But the capital ships were unstoppable. They descended past the grid's defenses, targeting Earth's major population centers. Massive gravitational distortions warped reality itself, tearing through city skylines. Energy pulses vaporized military installations before they could even launch their counterattack. Humanity was losing. And then, it happened. The defiant blow. When backed into a corner, humanity had always done the unthinkable. When faced with destruction, it had always rewritten the rules of war. The moon's hidden payloads were activated. For decades, humanity had feared the use of nuclear warheads in space. The devastation, the consequences, too catastrophic to comprehend. But now, there was no other choice. Hundreds of nuclear warheads buried beneath the lunar surface were detonated simultaneously. The effect was unlike anything the enemy had ever encountered. The force of the explosions shattered the moon's crust, sending a shockwave of debris directly into the heart of the extermination fleet. Gigantic chunks of lunar rock, propelled at unthinkable speeds, slammed into enemy warships. Entire sections of the armada were torn apart, crushed beneath planetary-scale destruction. For the first time since they had arrived, the extermination fleet hesitated. They had underestimated humanity again. But the battle was far from over. The enemy's strongest forces were still standing, and Earth, battered and burning, now faced its darkest hour. Earth was burning. The first wave of the extermination fleet had been devastated, but the strongest ships remained. Their massive hulls, black as the void itself, hovered over the wounded planet. The destruction they had already unleashed was beyond comprehension. Cities lay in ruin. The oceans boiled in places where orbital bombardments had struck with relentless force. Humanity had suffered more in a single day than in all of its wars combined. And yet, it had not fallen. The enemy's greatest weapon had never been its firepower. It had never been its fleets, nor its unimaginable technology. It had been fear, the knowledge that every civilization that had faced them had surrendered to inevitability, that none had fought to the last breath. But Earth had not surrendered. The Last War Council, beneath the shattered remains of Washington, Moscow, Beijing, London, and every other major capital, humanity's leaders gathered in the last operational bunkers. Presidents, generals, scientists, refugees, all waiting for the final message. The last remaining AI-controlled satellites fed them live data, enemy. Warships holding position over key cities, energy signatures building up. They weren't just going to invade, they were going to break humanity. Slowly, methodically, piece by piece, Earth had one shot left, and so the order was given: launch the Valkyries. The final counterattack. For decades, Earth had experimented with experimental spacecraft, hypersonic bombers, orbital fighters, scrapped prototypes of a future that had never arrived. Now, every single one of those failed projects was being launched at once. The enemy had adapted to humanity's strategies. They had overcome the asteroid ambush, survived the Martian bombardment, withstood the destruction of the moon. But they had never seen humans fight like this. Thousands of missiles, drone swarms, and nuclear warheads screamed into the sky, launched from hidden silos deep beneath Earth's crust. Suicide bombers in retrofitted cargo ships flew straight toward the largest enemy vessels, detonating their reactors on impact. Hypervelocity railguns fired from the depths of underground bunkers, punching through the largest ships ever constructed, and, in the chaos, hidden among the debris of their own dying world, the Valkyrie-class interceptors emerged. These were the last of Earth's space fighters, ships built for battles that had never happened, pilots who had never seen real war. And yet, they charged. Not because they had a chance, but because no one else in the galaxy had ever dared. The turning point, the first wave of Valkyries struck like lightning. Their engines burned hot as they weaved through enemy formations, their weapons striking in coordinated waves. They targeted weak points, not with firepower, but with ingenuity. They used physics itself as a weapon. Enemy warships, massive and complex, relied on perfect energy shielding. But what happened if those shields were destabilized? Human pilots, reckless beyond reason, deliberately crashed their ships at near-relativistic speeds into key points of enemy hulls. The resulting energy feedback overloaded their shields, causing power failures across entire formations. And for the first time in history, the extermination fleet lost control. Massive ships, once impervious, became vulnerable. AI-guided human missiles slammed into their reactors. EMP blasts disabled their command networks. The swarm of tiny human-built drones, mere specks compared to the vast enemy warships, hacked into their systems. The enemy fleet faltered. They had fought civilizations that had begged for mercy, civilizations that had prayed for a quick death. They had never fought a species that fought like this. A species that turned the very fabric of space into a weapon. A species that sacrificed its own in calculated, precise ways. Not for defeat, but for victory. And suddenly, across the galaxy, alien empires were watching. For the first time, they saw what happened when a species did not cower, when it did not bow, when it did not wait for extinction, but instead roared in defiance, and the extermination fleet, for the first time in their history, was afraid. Because Earth had stood up, and the galaxy trembled. The moment Earth refused to die, the war changed. Across the void, the enemy fleet, once an unstoppable force, found itself on the defensive. Their ships, built for annihilation, had never faced a foe that adapted as quickly as humanity. Their entire strategy had been based on overwhelming firepower, on striking before their enemies could react. But humanity? Humanity thrived in chaos, and Earth's forces had just forced chaos upon the greatest war machine the galaxy had ever seen. The last stand becomes an offensive. The orbital battlefield was a graveyard. Ships, human and alien alike, burned in the skies above Earth. The moon, once a proud satellite, was now a shattered husk, its debris still carving through the void. But against all odds, Earth still stood, and for the first time, the extermination fleet was losing control. Their capital ships, designed for planetary bombardment, were suddenly being forced to engage in dogfights. Their enormous weapons, built to obliterate cities, were struggling to track smaller human ships. And worst of all, their command network, once an unbreakable hierarchy of synthetic intelligence, was compromised. Because humanity had done the impossible. They had hacked the enemy. In the midst of the battle, a small team of human engineers, hidden deep within an underground bunker in Antarctica, had discovered something terrifying. The enemy's warships weren't just controlled by AI. They were a hive mind. Every single vessel was connected to a central intelligence, guiding them with perfect efficiency. And if there was one thing humanity was better at than war, it was breaking things. The Trojans' signal a desperate plan was put into action. The last remnants of Earth's cyber warfare division sent a signal, an echo of the enemy's own commands, back through their fleet. It was risky, reckless, and based on a single, horrifying gamble, that even perfect AI had weaknesses. For all their technology, the extermination fleet had never encountered a species that could think in illogical, unpredictable ways. They had never encountered a civilization whose soldiers could disobey orders, whose engineers could repurpose ancient technology into weapons on the fly. And so, when the Trojan signal was deployed, the enemy's network did something it had never done before. It hesitated. For exactly 4.2 seconds, the extermination fleet's command structure collapsed. And in war, 4.2 seconds is an eternity. Earth's forces struck. Every remaining warship, every surviving Valkyrie-class fighter, every last missile, railgun, and nuclear payload was fired in a single coordinated attack, and the fleet burned. Enemy warships, once invincible, shattered. Their massive hulls were torn apart by well-placed human strikes. Entire command vessels, ships the size of continents, fell from orbit, crashing into the oceans below. And for the first time in history, an extermination fleet failed. The unthinkable had happened. A species that was meant to be erased still stood. The galaxy watches in horror. The war should have ended there. The enemy should have retreated. But the extermination fleet was not programmed to retreat. Instead, their final failsafe was activated. Across the wreckage of their fallen fleet, a signal pulsed through the void. A distress call. Not a request for reinforcements, not a plea for survival. A single message sent across the stars to the countless civilizations that had once feared this unstoppable force. We require a purge protocol. And at that moment, across the galaxy, a terrible realization dawned upon every species that had ever lived in fear of the extermination fleets. They had thought Earth was doomed. They had thought the war would be over in days. But instead, they had just witnessed the first species to fight back, and now the entire galaxy had to answer a question they had never prepared for. Would they stand with Earth? Or would they be next? The moment the Purge Protocol was activated, the fate of the entire galaxy shifted. For countless eons, the extermination fleets had been an undeniable force, a silent, relentless executioner of civilizations deemed unworthy. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever dared. But Earth's defiance had changed everything. And now, the galaxy was watching. The decision that would define the future across the vast interstellar empires. Entire worlds held their breath as the distress signal from the Annihilation Fleet spread like wildfire. For the first time in history, the species of the galactic community saw something they never believed possible. The Extermination Fleet. Failing. It was a moment of reckoning. For centuries, empires had submitted to fear, hiding in the shadows, hoping they would not be noticed by the executioners. Entire species had abandoned homeworlds, rewritten their histories, even mutilated their own genetics just to avoid standing out, just to survive. But now, a primitive, warlike, and chaotic species, humanity, had done the unthinkable. They had not run, they had not begged, they had fought back. And more than that, they had won. This was not just another extermination. This was a challenge, and every empire, every lost colony, every hidden refuge in the darkness of space now had a choice. Would they stand with the last defenders of Earth, or would they wait for their own judgment day? The Council of the Silent Throne deep within the Maya Galactic core, where stars burned so brightly that entire worlds bathed in eternal daylight. The oldest empire still in existence convened an emergency meeting. They were called the Silent Throne. They had survived for over 1,000,000 years, not by fighting, but by waiting. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, watched the executioners wipe out countless species, and they had always done nothing. But now, their simulations were breaking. Their calculations, once perfect, were beginning to fracture. Because humanity was an anomaly, an extermination fleet had never lost. There had never been a scenario in which the executioners failed. And now, thousands of predictive models were beginning to spiral into chaos. Earth had corrupted the pattern. For the first time in eons, the Silent Throne spoke. Summon the warlords. Summon the hidden fleets. Summon the relic ships from the dawn of our empire. We must choose. The last stand becomes a galactic war. The extermination fleet, though wounded, was not broken. Their purge protocol was designed for a situation like this. If one fleet failed, then others would be called from the vast shadow armadas hiding in the depths of the void. Already, new fleets were emerging. Dozens, hundreds. The galactic core trembled. Planets that had once ignored humanity now had no choice but to prepare. Because if the executioners returned in force, and if Earth fell, then no one would be safe. And so, the impossible began to happen. The empires of the galaxy, fractured and divided for millennia, began to move. Ships that had remained hidden in deep space activated. Weapons locked away for generations were awakened. Old enemies who had waged wars for centuries now spoke the unthinkable words, "We must stand with Earth." Because if one planet could defy the executioners, maybe, just maybe, the galaxy didn't have to fear them anymore. The signal that changed everything. As the first of the hidden fleets began to move, Earth sent a message across the stars. A single broadcast, translated into every known language, sent through every channel that could reach the farthest corners of the universe. A declaration. A promise. We are humanity. We were meant to die. We refused. And now, we will not stand alone. If you have ever feared the executioners, if you have ever run from their judgment, then stand with us, because today, we fight for the right to exist, and we will not fall. The message traveled faster than light. across war-torn systems, across abandoned ruins, across hidden civilizations that had long since lost hope. And for the first time, the executioners felt something they had never known. Doubt. They had always assumed that if one species resisted, it would simply delay the inevitable. That no one would come to their aid. That fear would keep the galaxy in chains forever. But now, the chains were breaking. The galaxy was not afraid anymore. And the extermination fleets, they were no longer the hunters. They were about to become the hunted. The executioners did not retreat. They did not bargain. They did not pause to reconsider. Instead, they did what they had always done. They came. A storm of darkness. From the void between galaxies, the executioners unleashed their final protocol. It was called the Abyss Doctrine. War unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of dark armadas emerged, ships so massive they could swallow moons whole. These were not mere fleets. They were extinction itself. Engineered over countless millennia, these were weapons designed to end wars before they began. Their strategy was simple. Burn every system that resisted. Erase every race that dared to stand against them. Make an example of Earth so that no species would ever question their dominion again. The last bastion of humanity on Earth. Every soldier, scientist, and strategist knew the truth. This was no longer about survival. This was about legacy. If Earth fell, let it fall in fire. Let the stars burn with the knowledge that humanity never surrendered. Above the planet, a fleet unlike any before assembled, ships built in the fires of desperation, forged from the wreckage of every battle they had fought. They had no illusions of victory, but they would make the executioners bleed. The battle of Sol, the battle did not begin. It erupted. The executioners' first strike shattered Jupiter's orbital stations. Saturn's rings were turned into a storm of fire. Mars, humanity's first interstellar colony, was reduced to glass. And yet, humanity fought on. Their weapons, once primitive compared to the executioners, now matched them shot for shot. Their defenses, once fragile, now held the line. And then, something even more impossible happened. The galaxy arrived. A universe united, they came as warlords, exiles, and desperate survivors. But when they saw Earth still standing, still fighting, they became something else. They became allies. The once divided empires, the hidden civilizations, the broken remnants of species thought extinct, they came. For the first time in the history of the cosmos, the executioners faced something they had never encountered before. A galaxy that refused to kneel. And as the fleets clashed, as the stars themselves trembled under the fury of battle, one truth became clear. This was not an extermination. This was war, the turning point. For every human ship that fell, 10 more from the liberated species rose in their place. For every planetary defense that was crushed, new fortresses were built overnight. For the first time in history, the executioners felt what it was like to be hunted. Their fleets, once thought unstoppable, were being torn apart. Their weapons, once capable of wiping out entire planets, were being countered. And then, Earth's final move was revealed. The Alpha Protocol. A secret project so classified that even humanity's allies had not known. Buried deep beneath the crust of the moon, humanity had constructed something that had never existed before. A weapon that could rewrite the laws of war. They called it the Singularity Lance, weapon designed not just to destroy ships, but to erase them from existence. As the executioner's command vessel, a fortress world the size of a gas giant, prepared to unleash its final desperate counterattack, humanity fired the lance. And the impossible happened. The command vessel did not explode, it did not burn, it simply ceased to exist. The end of tyranny. The death of the command vessel shattered the executioner's forces. Their fleets, designed to follow only the absolute authority of their overlords, collapsed into chaos. Across the battlefield, the tide turned. One by one, the executioner's ships were hunted down. Their weapons, once feared across the universe, were dismantled. The executioners, who had once judged entire civilizations, now faced their own judgment, and the galaxy gave its verdict. Exile. The surviving executioners were cast into the void, stripped of their power, their technology dismantled, their empire erased. For the first time in 1 billion years, the cosmos was free. The dawn of a new age, as Earth rebuilt, as the galaxy recovered, one truth remained. This was not just a battle. This was a revolution. Turning point in history where fear was replaced with defiance, where submission was replaced with unity. Humanity, once seen as insignificant, primitive, and doomed, had not only survived, they had led the charge. And as the stars shone down upon the war-torn systems, one message echoed through the cosmos. We are humanity. We were meant to die. We refused. And because we refused, the galaxy will never be the same again.